What is going on, college basketball fans? Today I'm going to give you guys my biggest losers of the college basketball transfer portal. Last week I gave you guys my biggest winners, so make sure you guys go check out that video after this one if you guys have not already. And before we get started, just want to say subscribe if you guys are new. We do a ton of college basketball content here on the channel, and you don't want to miss it. So I'm ready to get started. Let's go. So our number one biggest loser of the transfer portal period in college basketball is actually the Kentucky Wildcats. Now, I will say Kentucky has a stacked recruiting class coming in. This freshman class they have coming in is definitely the number one recruiting class in all of college basketball. So for that, I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt for not really attacking the transfer portal that hard. However, if we're talking purely transfer portal, Kentucky has to be one of the biggest losers of the transfer portal. I mean, they have brought in a total of 0 players through the transfer portal, and they lost 4 players. And the one guy that they were really attacking and trying to go after in Hunter Dickinson, they did not get. They lost out on him to Kansas. So I have to put Kentucky on here. Purely transfer portal wise, they have to be a loser because they missed out on Hunter Dickinson. They lost Lance Ware to Villanova. They lost Severe Wheeler. They lost C.J. Frederick. They lost Damian Collins. That's 4 losses that I'm sure, even though they have a absolutely stacked recruiting class coming in, they still would have liked to have some of these guys as veteran players around on this team. So that really stinks for them, but they're still going to be a really good team next year. One of the best teams in the SEC still with this recruiting class, but it is nice to have some veteran presence, and I'm surprised that Coach Calipari did not go out and try to bring in some veteran players out of the transfer portal to just, even if they're going to be bench players. I mean, I think it could have really helped this roster out a ton, but yeah, Kentucky, biggest loser on my list here today. Coming in here at number 2, I have a team that has had a rough couple of years, the last few years in college basketball, and that is the Oregon Ducks. Now, Oregon, we all thought that they would have a bounce back year this past season and make the March Madness tournament. I mean, Dana Altman is a really good coach, and when they can get to the tournament, they usually make a little bit of a run. But Oregon, unable to make the March Madness tournament, weren't good enough in a really bad Pac-12 conference last year, and now heading into this offseason, they have had one of the worst transfer portals out of anyone in college basketball, and they lost quite a bit, including their 5-star center Khalil Ware, who was a top 10, top 5 in some rankings coming out of his class. It was just a freshman last year, lost him to Indiana through the portal. They also lost Rivaldo Soares, Quincy Guerrero, Tyrone Williams, and Lockwur. I mean, that's a load of players to lose, and including Khalil Ware just makes that so much worse. And the only 2 players that they brought in this offseason is Devon Cambridge out of Arizona State and Harris Quindo out of Georgia, which are all right pickups, but you definitely downgraded here, in my opinion, if you are the Oregon Ducks. And I wonder, even though Oregon is such like a name brand school, mostly for football, though, I don't know. Dana Altman, he's a good head coach. We'll see how he recovers from this, but a bad transfer portal period here for Dana and the Oregon Ducks. And here at number 3, we do have the Maryland Terrapins. Now, the Terps have had a rough offseason, in my opinion. Just like Kentucky, they missed out on Hunter Dickinson and lost out on him to Kansas, and they also lost guys like Hakeem Hart. Hakeem Hart is a really good player who transferred out to Villanova. That's a big gain for Villanova, and he's definitely a guy that Maryland would have loved to have back on the squad. They also lost Ike Cornish and Ian Martinez, and the only guys that they brought in were Chance Stevens out of Loyola Marymount and also Gordon Jarmio out of Indiana. Now, those are okay pickups, and it's good that they got a few players out of the portal, but in my opinion, they definitely downgraded over the offseason, and losing Hakeem Hart and missing out on Hunter Dickinson, those 2 things alone have me putting Maryland on my losers list. Coming in here at number 4, we have a Big 12 team, and it is Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State has had a really rough offseason, and when you are playing in the Big 12 conference, which is so stacked, absolutely stacked Big 12 conference, you need to attack the transfer portal if you are a team like Oklahoma State. But here are the players that they lost. They lost 3 huge players in the transfer portal, which include Moussa CS, Avery Anderson, and Caleb Boone. I mean, 3 super good players that it's really going to hurt this Oklahoma State team to lose. Avery Anderson, a guy who always plays good in the Big 12 competition. That's why I think it's so huge for a team like TCU to pick him up. They also lost Caleb Boone, who was a veteran guy on this Oklahoma State team that always comes out and plays hard. Moussa CS, a former 5-star recruit, lost him in the transfer portal to Ole Miss. And the only players that they gained were Javon Small out of ECU, Mike Marsh out of Jacksonville, and Jarius Hicklin out of Northern Florida. Now, could they be decent players? Sure, I'm sure they're pretty good, but in the Big 12 Conference, picking up those players in the transfer portal, especially for what you lost, that's just not going to cut it, especially when you're coming off of a season where you were already a bottom team in the Big 12 and now you are downgrading. This immediately makes me think Oklahoma State is going to be a bottom 2 team in the Big 12 Conference next season. Almost guaranteed. Like Oklahoma State, they're just not looking good after this offseason. Including those big 3 players that they lost, they also lost 2 more players in Woody Newton and Tyreek Smith. So they lost a total of 5 players, including 3 players that are just starter material players and veteran players. So that really sucks for Oklahoma State. And Mike Boynton, we'll see how much longer he has as the head coach there at Oklahoma State. He may have limited years as the Pokes head coach. And here at number 5, I do have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, the reason they are coming in here at number 5 as the last loser on this list is because they are the only team on this 5-team list that has had a coaching change over the offseason. So I give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there, but they made a really good hire this offseason in hiring Penn State's former head coach Micah Shrewsbury. I think that it was an amazing head coaching hire by Notre Dame, but they have not had a good offseason whatsoever. They lost J.J. Starling, their 5-star recruit, to Syracuse. That one really, really hurts because J.J. Starling is an absolute stud. They also lost Cormac Ryan, who was a really good player, to North Carolina, and they also lost other players, including Dom Campbell, Robbie Carmody, and Van Lynn Lubin. So they lost a total of 5 players, including 2 really good players, in my opinion, J.J. Starling and Cormac Ryan. And the only players that they picked up were Keba Nije, who was a transfer who followed Micah Shrewsbury from Penn State, and also Julian Peppers. So I think Notre Dame has had a really rough offseason, although I do think that their head coaching hire in Micah Shrewsbury will pay off in the long run. But if we're talking just this offseason, just this transfer portal, they got to come in here on this losers list. But I do give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here because they have had a coaching change, unlike the rest of these teams. Honorable mentions for the losers list, I do have the Baylor Bears. They were really close to being put on this list. They definitely did not have a good transfer portal whatsoever. They lost a guy like LJ Cryer, who could have been a superstar on this Baylor team next year, but Baylor does have a really good recruiting class coming in this offseason. Similarly to Kentucky, really good recruiting class. They're still going to be a really good team in college basketball. It just did not have a good transfer portal. Also, a team like Auburn. Auburn is another team. They have a really good recruit coming in, but They just did not have that great of an offseason. I thought they were a lock to pick up a guy like Matthew Cleveland, the transfer out of Florida State, but they lost out on him to Miami. So that was a rough loss there for Bruce Pearl. They did not have a good transfer portal period. Speaking of Matthew Cleveland, the team that he left, Florida State. Florida State had an awful offseason this year in the transfer portal, and things are just not looking good for FSU basketball here in the near future. The last honorable mention is Stanford. Now, Stanford basketball, really Stanford athletics, just has had a rough time in the transfer portal just because they only can bring in like super smart players, so it's hard for them to really bring in a lot of guys. They did bring in Jared Bynum, but they lost out on their guy in Harrison Ingram. So I just think Stanford, they've had a rough offseason, especially in the transfer portal period. And for schools like that who are just like super smart schools, it's really rough on them in the transfer portal. But that is going to do it for this video. video. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section, and let me know who you guys think is the team that is the biggest loser of the college basketball transfer portal this year. And yeah, guys, make sure you guys subscribe if you guys are new. A ton of college basketball content here on the channel and a ton more coming out. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.